Hey guys, this is Navonod with a new series called Silver Bullets, No Limit Hold'em Silver Bullets. Advancing your No Limit Hold'em game, one aha moment at a time. And basically, the idea of the series is going to be to go over one fundamental aspect of No Limit Hold'em and really look at it from a conceptual level, and hopefully open your eyes to some new ideas, some new thoughts, get you thinking about things you haven't thought of before. And if this game plan is successful, if the topic that you're watching, the topic that's being covered while you're watching, is new to you, then you very possibly, and I would say probably, even probably, be a little bit better at No Limit Hold'em after watching each episode, and your potential for becoming even better than that with more time, more thinking, and more off the table work could really be pretty huge. So, got a lot of stuff to cover in this first number one in the series, this first concept, which is something that is not talked about very often. And as far as I know, I've coined the term range elegance. So the word of the day is elegance. What do we mean when we talk about elegance? Well, things that are elegant are all often called beautiful, but we can think of beauty or elegance in the way that we're going to be using the term as efficiency. So things that are elegant are efficient, economical, they're more optimized, more streamlined. And I think that if you look at a player's ranges, if they laid it all out for you, they wrote all of their 3-bet ranges, flatting ranges, 3-bet, fold to 4-bet, 3-bet, get it in, whatever their overall strategy from any given point in the game. If you looked at somebody who really had a very well thought out game plan, who was very good at constructing ranges and planning lines, just a really good poker player that could really show you exactly what he plans to do, I think the hallmark of greatness when it comes to range construction is elegance. And I think this is true of a lot of things. I've got a martial arts background, and there are a lot of things that strike me as very beautiful in martial arts. If somebody comes out guns a blazing, say in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, big, huge, muscle bound guy, dodges a punch pretty sloppily, and then comes with a right hook from, well, okay, a left hook from, yeah, right hook from way out, I don't know, from one side of the ring or the octagon to the other, and really just goes coast to coast on it and just happens to hit somebody. I mean, probably not the most beautiful or elegant thing. But when you see one fighter throw a punch and the other one slips the punch by mere inches or maybe an inch, and kind of dodges the punch with the least wasted movement possible, and then as he's coming back in from dodging or slipping the punch, throws one of his own, and you have that complete economy of motion, and that perfect sort of simplicity. I think there's a lot of beauty in that. If you're watching somebody do, like in high level Brazilian Jiu Jitsu competitions, set up kind of like the perfect armbar, and there's no no fanciness to it. It's just very methodical, one step at a time, and it's elegant, it's graceful at every step of the way, in every transition. There's no wasted movement. It is just completely to the point, and it is precise. To me, that is beautiful, and I think it's beautiful because it's elegant, and I think it's elegant because it's efficient. If you see like a ballerina doing very complicated movements, but they do them in a way that makes them look easy, I think that which makes it look easy is the efficiency, and that efficiency is what rings to us most commonly in the form of perceived elegance. I think there's elegance in mathematics, there's elegance in nature. Um, if you've got two guys even writing computer code, my brother's a computer coder, so if you've got two guys that are writing the same exact code, so they want their computer programs to do the exact same thing, perform the same application, and one of them can do this with 1,000 lines of code, and the other one can do the same, can accomplish the same exact goal with 20 lines of code. that 20 lines of code is much more elegant because it's much more efficient. And the same is true of mathematics and equations. You know, if you've got what Albert Einstein was looking for, a grand unified theory, you know, if he was able to condense the quote mind of God or thoughts of God into a like one-page equation, that would be quite elegant. Whereas there's been, you know, many volumes on physics that have kind of stabbed at or kind of helped us to poke and prod on the quote mind of God or at the quote mind of God. But if you could formulate an equation that was really a theory of everything and it took one page, that would be extremely efficient, extremely elegant. Just kind of like E equals MC squared. It conveys such a powerful amount of it conveys such an amount of information in such a small little space, and that's the efficiency, and that's the beauty, and that's the kind of thing that I sort of stand in awe of in nature, and I think probably the same is true with physical beauty. But I don't know, getting off topic, I suppose. So if we look at the OST, and that's my notation or annotation for old school tag, someone who would have been fairly effective at No Limit Hold'em in like circa 2006. If we look at the way they played the games, even the top players back in, say, I don't know, circa 2000, their play was kind of clunky compared to today. They had cumbersome things that they did. They would be rigid. They had sort of a, if you know what I mean by high entropy, their play was in a high entropy state. If ever there was an equilibrium, it was very frail, fragile, not at all robust equilibrium. It wasn't stable. They weren't balanced at all. It wasn't really part of the game plan. I mean, they would, quote, mix it up, but and they would try to, quote, play the opposite of their table image, but really, you know, they weren't balanced. They weren't even thinking in those terms. And a lot of what they did, if you looked at it now, it kind of looks random and it's definitely inefficient. So the new school mag in my annotation mag, or my annotation for a kind of new school good player who's capable of changing gears, who's not exactly maniacal, not exactly tight, is almost always aggressive, is a mag, and I just use it to mean moderately aggressive. So if it's NS mag, that means it's a guy that I don't really want to get in pots with unless I feel like I have card advantage and or position. So anyway, they're going to have a much more streamlined approach to the game. They're not doing a bunch of things that are wasteful. They're not just splashing around chips without any real sense of what they're trying to accomplish. Every single chip that's put into the pot has a target. It has a very like exact, definitive reason for being in the pot. Everything's more, you know, smoothed out, streamlined. They're not at all rigid. These ranges, while they might be quite balanced, ordered, and efficient, are also versatile and dynamic. They're able to adjust them because the ranges that any really good player has in their mind or written down on their sheet of paper or whatever it is, a chart, if they have a starting hands chart or a 3-bet chart, which I know many players have moved away from, but they still have some version of that, some semblance of that, at least in their mind. Even if they do have this kind of starting hand chart, in air quotes, it's going to be charted out beyond just the initial standard default chart. There's also going to be subcharts. For instance, you know, my default open range at 6 max from the button is going to be a range of about depending on the, well, okay, so my default range is going to be about the top half of the deck. And but I don't just say I'm going to open the top half of the deck, and then depending on how my opponent's playing the blinds, I'm going to open some other hands. I know what other hands I'm going to add in and why I'm going to add them in, like what type of opponents I'm going to add them in against. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes I'll even subtract some of the hands from my default open range. But really, mostly that's not the way that I think, and it's not the way that I do it in practice. But I guess I should say it could make sense to do that. But there's a method to it, and it's not at all random, and it's as efficient as I can possibly be, and I'm always moving towards becoming more efficient, and I hope that by the time you watch the end of this video, that's your new goal too, is to introduce this concept of range elegance to your own no limit hold'em strategy. So this is just an example, and this is an example that's going to, I hope, illustrate some of the ideas that I'm trying to present, and illustrate maybe some of the big differences between a top pro from 10, 15 years ago and a top pro today, and hopefully it'll get your kind of gears turning about things that you could do differently in your own game. So let's take an example where we've got sort of an old school villain who is on the laggy side of the spectrum for 2006, like a Gus Hansen. So we've got Gus Hansen opening the hijack position to 3 times the big blind off a 100 big blind stack in a multi-table tournament with a, let's say, $2,000 buy-in. We're 100 big blinds effective, and we're very far from the money. So ICM's not really getting involved here too much. So villain is opening to 3 times the big blind off 100 bigs. Hero has 100 bigs also, and a tight aggressive table image. So we're hero, obviously. Let's say we hold the ace of diamonds, king of hearts. What ought we do with that hand? Pretty clear 3-bet. I don't think anybody would argue that. But beyond aces, kings, ace, king, and queens, and even I would say beyond aces, kings, and ace, king, there's probably a lot of room for debate regarding our best play. Now, I think it would be pretty criminal to not 3-bet a very loose, aggressive opponent's open raise if he's opening from late position and we're on the button if we have a hand like queens. But it's not without its merit flatting queens in this situation. Because remember, what you do with one range is going to affect your other ranges, and it may not be the worst idea in the world to have some really big hands in your flatting range against a player that's going to really attack relentlessly. But let's just say for now that queens plus and ace king offsuit are a pretty standard 3-bet against a loose aggressive opponent, and surely they are. But what about these other hands? What if we have 2 nines, or ace of hearts, 8 of hearts, king 10 suited, 10 8 suited, queen jack suited, ace 10 offsuit or suited? If we've got the 9 of hearts, 8 of hearts, jack 10 offsuit, jack 10 suited, pocket 3s, pocket 4s, pocket 5s. What if we have exactly king queen offsuit? What if we have king jack suited? What are we doing with these hands? What are we doing with a hand like ace jack offsuit, where we realize that we're almost always ahead of any decent player's opening range in a kind of late position situation where the action folds to villain in late position? Ace jack offsuit would almost certainly be ahead of their range, but is it worth 3-betting? And what do we gain by 3-betting compared to what we lose from 3-betting? Surely if you took a hand like ace 10 suited against the hijack, who's loose and aggressive, certainly 3-betting ace 10 suited from the button against a loose aggressive hijack, it's going to be a plus EV 3-bet. But the question is, I mean, that's vacuum EV. It's going to be plus EV in a vacuum. But what effect is it going to have on the other hands in our range? If it's taking away significantly from the other hands in our range or ranges, and it's not that plus EV, if there is another option that is greater than or even equal to that option in terms of EV, and it benefits the rest of our range, that's really the ticket. That's really what we want to try to do to optimize not just how we play this hand, but how the way we play this hand affects the other hands that we play. So, an example, 9-9. What are we going to do with 9-9 in this spot? I mean, definitely you could 3-bet it, but is that the best thing you could do? It's definitely going to be plus EV. But is it the most plus EV? I mean, are there things that we haven't considered when we take a line of thought that's sort of like, well, my hand is way ahead of villain's range. I don't mind folding out his overcards, and if he does call, this hand won't be that hard to play post flop. Which, nines could be kind of debatable whether it is or is not hard to play post flop. But okay, let's just take a look at the flop. So in this example, let's say we had any one of the hands I listed here, listed in hero's range, and we flat called. So if we're flatting here with a hand that is not ace king, but one of the other hands underneath ace king, with one of these hands, if we flat here, and the flop comes out ace of diamonds, nine of hearts, seven of hearts, and villain makes a continuation bet of 6 big blinds into a 9 big blind pot. What does our 3-bet range, the hands that are actually in our 3-bet range, what do they do to our flat calling range when the flop comes out ace, 9, 7? In other words, if we are always 3-betting ace king, we're always 3-betting ace jack, we're always 3-betting ace queen, even ace 10 suited, if those hands are going to be 3-bets for us, because we're 3-betting a very linear range, and we're always doing that, and we're never flatting any aces other than maybe like, I don't know, like ace X suiteds that are not quite good enough for us to put in a linear value merge 3-bet range, then what does that do to our ability to really defend against a lot of aggression on a board of ace 9 7? And I would say even more so if it's ace 9 7 rainbow, because then we're not even going to have flush draws in our range. Now, what if we have a very different flop? So okay, obviously the answer is it hurts our ability to continue when we flat call, because our range is very capped, and it's capped very specifically on ace XX boards, right? When the flop comes out ace XX, we're in a lot of trouble against most players' open range if we have a linear 3-bet range and we're not flat calling with strong enough hands, and we're not 3-betting with enough weak or bluffy hands. So it really, what it does is it puts us in a spot where we rarely have enough showdown value to continue profitably against multiple streets of aggression. We may have like exactly, what, 2 combos, maybe 3. Well, yeah, we'd have maybe 9 7 suiting, and there's not many combos of that because there's a 9 and a 7 on the board, and there's only so many suited combos, right? So there's only 3 combos of 9 7 suited. So we've got 3 combos of that, and then we might have full combos of 9s and full combos of 7s, but that's probably it. So we're not going to have enough value hands to be able to call down often enough on this flop to stop villain from continuation betting his entire range profitably. So we're allowing our opponent to exploit us on a board that's pretty common to see. The other thing is we're not going to be able to bluff very often because our story's not going to be very believable, simply because we don't have enough hands that really want to 3-bet on ace 9 7. Now we may have some hands like ace 5 suited using kind of an old school taggy mostly 3-bet or fold approach, and then just calling with speculative hands. We may have some hands that want to call once or twice, but we're not going to have enough hands that want to raise for value for us to be able to bluff raise, and that's a problem. Now let's flip that. What if we flat call in the same spot and the flop comes out jack 9 8 rainbow? Now what if we have a hand like queen jack of hearts or pocket 9s, or really even 10 8 on this board? What does that do to our ability to get value from our opponent's range? If our opponent is pretty good and he understands that our game is a very like raise or fold type approach to poker, and that we're only flat calling with suited connectors and maybe like suited broadways that aren't good enough to 3-bet and pocket pairs, how much action are we really planning to get on this jack 9 8 flop? I mean, we're not going to be able to get good action. And so that means that when we get here and we do have air, we're not really going to be able to take advantage of how strong our range is, because, I mean, bluffing is just not going to work out for us. It's going to be very effective to bluff, but we're just not going to have enough bluffs to take advantage of the fact that we're going to have range advantage. So, yeah, in position, we should be able to play a lot of hands. But if we're just 3-betting a linear range, then we're not going to be playing a lot of hands. If you think about it, if we're going to take like just say some, I don't know, pocket 8s, just exactly what I have here. Pocket 8s would be the smallest or weakest pair that we're going to 3-bet, so we're 3-betting 8s plus, and if we're 3-betting ace 10 suited plus and ace jack offsuit plus, and then king queen suited, king queen offsuit, and like that's it, what the heck are we calling with? I mean, it just, when we have such a predictable range that three bets, that also means we have a predictable range when we flat call. We're never flat calling like ace five offsuit or king seven suited. So if we're not three betting those hands as part of a polarized range, then we're just not playing those hands. So if instead of pocket eights, we use a hand like 8-7 suited to three bet, that's not quite good enough to call with. Or let's say we have, instead of ace 10 of diamonds, instead of three betting ace 10 of diamonds, we three bet ace 5 offsuit or even ace 5 suited. And instead of ace jack offsuit, we throw in a hand like, ace 2 offsuit or ace 5 offsuit. Instead of three betting king queen, we three bet king 7 suited. Well, now we have more hands in our range, and we can go ahead and flat call with king queen offsuit, pocket eights, ace 10 of diamonds, ace jack offsuit, and king jack suited. We can just go ahead and call. We can flat call with those hands, and we can three bet those other hands, and that is a net gain in the overall number of hands that we are able to play profitably, assuming we think we can profitably three bet either the bottom of a linear three bet range like pocket eights, queen jack suited, ace 10 of diamonds, that kind of thing, ace jack offsuit. If we think we can profitably three bet those hands, it's probably a given that we can also profitably three bet hands like ace 5 suited, ace 8 offsuit, maybe. Just whatever you think is going to be the best type of hand to include. But we're going to be able to three bet bluffs profitably if we're going to be able to take the bottom of a linear three bet range and three bet it profitably. And the net effect is it's going to add hands to our overall ranges. And as we're about to see, I hope you'll understand that not only are we adding more hands to our range, but we're also able to play them more profitably. So each of these hands is adding profit to the other hands that would already be in our range. So the way we're going to be able to play more hands in position is by constructing our ranges as efficiently as possible. So just some bullet points here. If we're three betting a predictable value merged range, like we're just going to take some bottom hands like ace jack offsuit, ace 10 suited, king jack suited, king queen offsuit, and 8-8 plus, we're just going to take those and whatever's better than those and three bet those. Then there's going to be two types of opponents that we're going to play against. If we already said our opponent is going to be pretty decent at poker, then we can guess he's likely going to play pretty 4-bet or fold versus a 3-bet against another decent player who's a tight aggressive image. And we can assume that he's likely not going to flat call a ton of 3-bets out of position because it's bad to do that. It's just not profitable for almost anybody. Very few players are good enough to call 3-bets out of position very often. So we're either going to be playing against a guy who's simply going to 4-bet or fold, or we're going to play against a guy who's mostly going to 4-bet or fold. And even in a rare situation where we're playing against a very wide opener, a very aggressive player, but he's not 4-betting very often, he is flat calling some, and he's 4-betting as a bluff some of the time, it's still not going to be good for us to use a value merged linear 3-bet range when we have the ability and the opportunity to 3-bet a polarized range profitably, again, because it allows us to use more hands. So, but those are the types of, he's either going to very rarely call, or he's going to call some of the time, right? So if he's calling some of the time but not very often, then that's one thing. But if villain literally never flat calls, and there are players who literally never flat call out of position when you 3-bet, then if we use a linear 3-betting range, we are simply messing up. It's just a mistake. It's bad. We're setting money on fire by not polarizing our 3-bet range, and kind of, hopefully this will show you. I'm going to just throw out some ideas and some examples of why that's such a bad idea. And let's look at the extreme. If villain never, ever, ever flat calls, are pocket nines any different than pocket twos? If we 3-bet, our opponent is only going to 4-bet or fold. Once he 4-bets, are our pocket nines any better than our pocket twos? What if he 4 bets and then we 5 bet, we ship it on him? If he calls us, is he going to be taking that line and then snapping it off with pocket sixes, fives, threes? Probably not. Eights even? Probably not. And if he's not doing that, pocket nines really aren't any different than pocket twos. Um, Now, how much difference is there? And there will be some difference because of blocker effects, but if we know for a fact that our opponent is not going to call us, he's only going to 4-bet or fold, how much difference is there between ace-5 and ace-jack? We're going to 3-bet it, and if he 4-bets us, we're not going to like it, right? So we're probably going to have to fold when we get 4-bet by a player who's out of position on us. And if we're folding anyway, it just doesn't make any difference what hand we're folding. Yeah, we have the jack blocker, but that's not a huge part of the range that he would probably 4-bet us with anyway. And we have the ace blocker in both situations. And then the other things are, how much value do we get out of ace queen and pocket jacks, which are going to be in the value portion of our polarized 3-betting range, but they're going to be kind of weird hands when you have a linear or a merged 3-bet range, because when you value merge your 3-bet range with ace queen and pocket jacks, how often is your opponent ever going to make a mistake, and how much are you going to like it even if he does? If he's only 4-betting or folding, you're probably going to have to call it with ace queen or pocket jacks. You're going to have to get it in, but you're not going to love it. And even if he does flat call, which would obviously be better, some of the time he flat calls, how much do you love it when somebody open raises, you 3-bet ace queen and they call, or you 3-bet pocket jacks and they call? I mean, it's just not going to be that easy to get value out of those hands. Your opponent's just not going to make a ton of mistakes against those hands, but he could if you're polarized, because if you have a polarized range, then your opponent has a lot more incentive to try to bluff raise you himself, and really he should have and should feel more incentivized to flat call and take flops with good equity type hands. But likely, most good players, even though they know theoretically, they may know or believe theoretically it makes sense to flat call some hands against a polarized 3-bet range, most of them still won't do it because they realize they're just not good enough to do it, or they've got a better plan or a different plan. So this is some illustrations of why it is so much more effective to take a hand like ace-5 suited and add it to your 3-bet range, as opposed to a hand like ace-jack offsuit or even ace-10 suited that's just going to flop much better in position. It's going to be kind of in between the space, the game space of villain's open raises and his continue versus 3-bet range. Yeah, so the other big problem with having a linear, not a polarized 3-bet range, is it's harder to play when you face a 4-bet. When you get 4-bet and you have a polarized range, it's pretty easy to just fold the bottom, like fold out all the bluffs. Just let go. If you have part of the bluff, you have like an ace-5 suited. If you're on the bluff end of your 3-bet polarized spectrum, then you just lay it down. If you have the value part of your range, then you have to decide then if you're going to have a flat calling range, and you very well might want to have a flat calling range depending on stack depth, you're in position. Then you could maybe take the top 25% and jam it, or plan on getting it in, re-raise and stack it off, and then take the other hands and just call them. And you can. It's just not that. It's not that hard to figure out. It's going to be different, a little hard to explain because it's going to depend a lot on, well, mostly stack depth and where the relative positions are, and our opponent's playing style, but mostly stack depth. But it won't be that hard to figure out if you really kind of just take this concept and think about it and practice on it. The other things are, and this is going back to one range's effect on another, so you have to think about how capped your flat calling range is when you're 3-betting all of your decent hands. Like when you're 3-betting king queen offsuit, king jack suited, ace 10 suited, ace jack offsuit, what are you flatting with? You're just so capped. Your range is so weak on most flops that you're just not going to be able to put up a good enough fight against a good aggressive player. And then how's our board coverage? And we've kind of talked about that or touched on that a little bit when we talked about the ace XX and the jack 10-9 or 10-9-8 kind of boards. Understanding that effect that the 3-bet range has on our flatting range and how our flat calling range affects our 3-betting range. If we're only flatting with speculative hands, basically, how do we stop villain from auto-profiting with his C-bets when the flop comes ace XX rainbow? And I would say we don't. And if you just flip that on its head, if we're never 3-betting light, so we're only 3-betting strong hands and stronger hands, how do we get value on ace queen 9 after we 3-bet it? So villain open raises, we 3-bet up linear range, and he calls, and the flop comes ace queen 9 rainbow. What hands do we have that miss that board? I mean, we never have a hand that wants to bluff, right? If we're very, very, very linear, we very rarely have air on this board. Like, we might have pocket 8s, pocket 10s, pocket jacks, but even those hands are going to have some like showdown value, and some of them have some like backdoor draw potential plus showdown value, depending on the suits, maybe even like backdoor straight draw, backdoor flush draw plus pair. I mean, there's not a lot of hands in a linear 3-betting range most of the time at 100 big blinds depth that are going to have incentive to bluff ace queen 9. So once you put a bet in, your opponent just folds. I mean, he just doesn't beat anything, except for the rare occasion where he opened a hand like ace 9 and you get hurt pretty bad and lose a big pot with your ace king. The other problem, again, we've touched on this, is how do we get value with our queen jack suited after we flat call an open raise? If villain opens and we flat call, and he knows we're only flat calling medium hands, we're 3-betting or folding everything else, then how on earth do we get value on 10-9-8? And it's a perfect spot for us if we do have this image as being capable of only flat calling with mediocre and speculative hands and 3-betting everything else or folding everything else, 3-betting or folding everything else, I should say, then 10-9-8 would be a perfect board for us to rep a big hand and bluff with. I mean, we have stellar range advantage on 10-9-8 after we flat call. The problem is we never have a bluff to leverage that situation with. It's going to crush our perceived range, which is fantastic, except that it's also going to crush our actual range, so we're not really going to be able to take advantage of that fact very often, and our opponent's going to have too easy a time getting away from a second best hand when we actually have something like the nuts on 10-9-8. So we're just too face up. And that's a big, big point. And that's like one of the big points that I wanted to make about range elegance. Elegance in your range construction. Can we leverage our own range advantage, and can we temper the effect of our opponent's range advantage? And, you know, really, if we never have bluffs, we can't take advantage of boards that crush our range. If we never have value hands, we can't bluff on boards that we miss. And really, I think if you find yourself in spots where you can never continue against a C-bet in a barrel with any of the hands in whatever range we're talking about, then you're probably not constructing your ranges very efficiently. You don't have board coverage in mind when you're doing it. And if you find yourself in a spot where you have just a monster hand, but you also have a monster range, and you just can't get action even when you're at the top of your range, and you just never have air to take advantage of the fact that you can't get action, then again, you're probably not optimized. Your range construction probably isn't spot on. This is the first video in the Silver Bullet series. I hope you found it helpful. Just reading down the line in conclusion: waste not, want not. Using hands that are not quite strong enough to flat as 3-bets is using them efficiently. You're not wasting a hand like King Queen offsuit or King Jack suited. You 3-bet King Jack suited, you're wasting it. You 3-bet Ace 5 suited, and you're getting a lot of folds from hands that you don't want to play against, and you're doing it with a hand that wouldn't even have called. It wouldn't have called anyway, so you're not wasting anything. That's the key. 3-betting hands that are just ahead of villain's opening range is usually turning it into a bluff, and that's usually bad. If you're taking a hand that is going to be a very big favor, a pretty good favorite against your opponent's range, and you're in position, especially if you have a skill edge, and you're 3-betting it you're making a mistake. It's bad. You know, if you're gonna take a hand that is doing very well against your opponent's range, that's usually not the best option. Range advantage exists, but we can temper it, and we have to be able to construct elegant ranges that allow us to play more hands profitably and add EV to the hands already in our ranges, you know, kind of regardless of how we construct the range. So that's it. Until next time, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoyed the series. Comment below. I'll answer any questions you might have. And good quote luck. End quote.